IVM.
Folks, welcome and thank you for joining us on this episode of the Ideas Project, a limited series by Small Case. I am your host, Anupam Gupta, and today we're joined by two guests, Hormazd Sorabjee, editor of Autocar, and Anmol Singh, co-founder of BluSMart Electric Mobility and founder of GenSol, Renewable Energy Group. Hormazd, I'm a big fan, of course, has been writing about cars and automobiles for over 30 years and has driven everything, Hormazd, on wheels. Everything on wheels, huh? From a 65-ton battle tank to a Formula One race car. I want to try both of them someday when I grow up. Anmol is the co-founder of one of the leading players in the EV space at BluSMart, a mobility company that uses exclusively electric cars in the ride-hailing business, basically fully equipped EV cabs. What a fabulous idea. These amazing qualifications make our guests today the perfect people to talk to about the electric vehicles and automobile sector in India. How fast are we as a country adopting EVs? How are government policies helping in this? How good is the EV infrastructure as it stands today? What are the challenges faced by the sector? Stay tuned after this short break to find out more.
Sneakers, there's so much more than just footwear. A cup of well-brewed coffee, that can taste like wine. Our phones can even tell the time, but a mechanical watch, that on your wrist, feels different. These subcultures, some very niche and some not so niche, are fantastic hobbies, and I'm obsessed with a lot of them. They're approachable, they're a lot of fun, and they're very, very therapeutic. My name is Anish, I'm the co-founder at Swami, a homegrown beverage brand, and I have many such niche interests, which I will explore with you on this podcast, aptly named Anish Thing. Anish Thing, every Tuesday on the IVM Podcast Network and all other major podcast platforms.
And welcome back. Hormazd, welcome to the show. Anmol, welcome to the show. Thank you both of you for doing this for our listeners.
Thank you.
Good to have you. Anmol, just give me 1 minute. I just have to, I have a fanboy moment. I have to ask Hormazd, what was it like driving that 65-ton battle tank? What was it like?
I mean, amazing sense of power, and it was quite a crazy experience. But I think what was amazing is it was much easier to drive than I thought. Obviously, there's no steering wheel. There's a yoke, the way you turn the tracks. But it was much easier than I thought it would be. And I think once you get the hang of it, you can have fun in it. You get this invincible sense of power. We keep saying cars feel like a tank, but now I know what a tank really feels like.
When you write your memoirs, please, I'm going to buy that book straight away. So, guys, like I said, feel free to speak whenever you'd like, and if you have a point of view, please put it across. I will be doing a bit of back and forth between the two of you, so let's start from there. Hormazd, since I'm with you, how on the industry in India and globally, how big is the industry? What have been the milestones? Any size of the industry that you track or map?
Well, I think, we've been, I would say, in a way, late starters. I would still say globally we are, behind the curve, or let's say, not really upfront in the EV race as yet. But I think we've had a much better start than I anticipated. Also in the two-wheeler and four-wheeler space, it's really gathering momentum. I track four-wheelers, and really good to see that a lot of people are putting plans forward. But I think there's just one lone horse right now. It's Tata Motors, which has literally taken the passenger car vehicle by storm. They have about 80-90% market share, literally. You've got other players, but they're very restricted and limited by how many cars they can deliver in the Indian market. I think in the two-wheeler space also, there's a lot of action happening. You've got all the, you've got from a lot of these, what we call low-speed vehicles below 25 kph, where you really don't need a license, also sometimes good for deliveries and stuff like that, going all the way up to the Aethers and Olas, which are really at the top end. And of course, now you've got the legacy players coming in, and especially TVS, with the iQube really doing a good job. So I think it's happening. It's, like I said, a slow start, but we're accelerating fast. And I think the main point here, a lot of it has to do with rising fuel prices. That I think has been a huge trigger. I've got an electric bike myself, and when I'm at the signal, they always ask, first running cost is how much do you charge? How much does it cost? And I think really fuel savings are frankly a bigger driving cost than saving the planet for a lot of these people.
Yeah, great point. Anmol, what is the current state of the infrastructure, the electric vehicle infrastructure in India? And of course, if you have any points of view on my previous question to Hormazd, please feel free to add add in?
Sure. I think I completely agree with Hormazd to say that Tata Motors is kind of solely dictating what's happening in the market. 95% of our fleet is Tata Motor fleet. So very happy to have collaborated with them and have seen how their technology is also kind of evolved from the first ESL car, which was their 110 kilometer range, to now the Ziptron cars, which are coming in. So happy to have collaborated with Tata Motors. But coming on the second one around the infrastructure for EVs, I think it's not even day zero. We are even before day zero right now, still in the gestation period, if I can use that word. So the infrastructure is bad. We are awfully short on charging infrastructure. But how I treat it is that it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for businesses like us and other folks who are coming in the EV ecosystem to actually go ahead and build it. Where in the world you will find an opportunity that you are going to transform the way the world is moving. What has been an established principle over the last 100, 120 years is now getting challenged, and new infrastructure, new types of vehicles. So in my head, it's like more than 10, $20 trillion kind of an opportunity which is there. So although the infrastructure is on the charging side is abysmally poor, but I look at it as an opportunity for some of us to kind of take this and build it out and ensure that what the large oil and gas companies have been able to build. And then if you see the top 20 companies in the world, top 10 companies are oil and gas companies. Basically, they deliver energy and the same can be delivered to electric vehicles through charging infrastructure. So it's a great opportunity and a great time in history to be that we are seeing such a momentous transition in place.
Yeah. So Anmol, my next question is to you. Yeah, please go on, Hormazd. Sorry.
Yeah, I just actually talking about infrastructure, I completely agree with Anmol. And, we've just experienced this as early as, last week. Or actually, yesterday we finished a drive from Kashmir to Kanyakumari in a Porsche Taycan, 4,000 kilometers, all electric. And, we did, it was not too bad. We managed. Again, we are quite pessimistic. So we thought we'd really have to hunt around for chargers. We did find them, but easier than we thought. But clearly, it did slow you down. And I think the challenge also sometimes is it's not just the infrastructure, it's how the infrastructure is deployed. Firstly, it's not always at a convenient location. Sometimes the chargers don't work. We've had this problem. Chargers are, not a very high capacity. Bulk of them are 25 kilowatt, which is fine for, cars with smaller batteries. But, as you grow bigger, it's going to take a long time charging. The Taycan, once it was really low, it took me 3.5 hours to charge it on a fast charger, 25 kilowatt charger. So clearly a lot needs to be done. I wish there were, let's say higher capacity chargers. We need minimum of a 50 kilowatt and, going up to 150 kilowatt as we go forward, because, cars are going to come with bigger batteries as we go forward, and you need the charging infrastructure to kind of, support those. Of course, the bulk will be the mass, which is the Tata Nexon, but still there will be, higher capacity battery cars coming as well. Yeah. So, just on that, just want to share my experience of how it's been across the country using the public charging infrastructure.
Okay, Anmol, I'm going to ask you this next question from your previous answer. And Hormazd, please feel free to, to give your insights on that. So, Anmol, you spoke about how small the industry is, and you spoke about the size of the opportunity. And we're seeing a massive transition out here from ICE, which is the internal combustion engine, to the electric engine. Talking only from the India perspective, do you think, just given the low numbers, we should be seeing a reasonably good growth going forward? I don't know how people will benefit from that, but given where we are, A, is the growth here to stay? It should be sustainably high. And, B, for a new player to come in, is there any juice, any opportunity left? So, Anmol, you first, and then please, Hormazd next.
Yeah, I think the opportunity is clearly very huge. And around the growth, I think if we are not doubling every year on the number of four-wheel electric sales, and we are talking specifically four wheels. I think two wheels are already doubling and more than doubling every year. But if we are not able to double up on four-wheel electric sales, electric vehicle sales for the next 5 years continuous, I think it'll be a job not very nicely done by some of the ecosystem players. So we are I think maybe Hormazd sir will have the better number, but I think we are at 0.5% or something like that when it comes to four-wheel electric sales as a percentage of the total cars being sold in the country. So 5 becoming 1 and 1 becoming 2 and 2 becoming 4. I think in the next 3 years, if we don't kind of achieve this kind of doubling rate, I think as an industry, we would have done our job properly. Which also comes into your second question around choose for the opportunity. I think it's a blue ocean out there. There is opportunity, and nothing else which is there. But it's not going to be one company, one EV, one OEM, one charging infrastructure company, one ride-hail company which is going to be dominating. It's going to be multiple of all of it, multiple automobile manufacturers, multiple charging point operators, multiple all EV ride-hailing companies which are going to come up. I think the only thing right now the sector offers, apart from a lot of kind of social media enthusiasm, is opportunity. So only social media and opportunity. I don't think there's too much money which is being made in the sector right now, but I'm sure that's courtesy smaller numbers. As the numbers kind of become bigger, there's tons of money which will also which is also flowing in, and there'll be a lot of profit creation too.
Yeah, Hormazd?
Yeah, I think the number has gone up. I mean, if you take roughly 2.5 million car sales, and I don't know what the EV sale was, but I would imagine last year it would be around maybe 30,000. Yeah, so maybe 1% up if you just do the math. So it's growing dramatically. I think I foresee a big wave coming in around by 2025, because by then you'll have all the big players coming in into the space. You'll have Maruti for sure coming in. They've got big EV plans. They've been quiet right now, but we do know that they've got a massive EV push happening. Mahindra have just announced that they showcase 5 EVs which are coming, and they're talking about 200,000 EV sales by 2027. So that's just Mahindra itself. And of course, you've got Tata Motors, which wants to keep its lead, and they will also be launching products. And you've got the Koreans as well, Hyundai and Kia, which also have EV plans. So I think and they're all coming around that period of 25, 26. So I think you'll suddenly see this big spurt. Right now, it's Tata Motors, which is really ruling the roost. Clearly, the others were caught napping because no one foresaw the sudden spike in growth. And coming to, shared mobility, I think it really lends itself to that, because, it's a very, very city focused. And I think the kind of range now which you're getting, Anmol, I think with the newer products, it kind of fits a daily run. So I think it works quite well. Even if you get 150, 200 clicks of range, it's pretty good for days running, and then probably overnight charge at a fixed location. So I also feel that, within the city, if you're just city bound, it's not so much of an issue. A lot of people who have EVs, they generally make sure they have their own charging infrastructure at home or whatever. But still, in big metros, everyone, it's just a very, very tiny percentage which have access to, their own dedicated charger, or access to a plug, in fact. And I think this really needs to change. I think housing societies need to be a lot more flexible. There should be some law where, in certain high rises, you have to have a minimum of so many chargers. I know a lot of residents who face problems, their societies don't allow them to put chargers. And there are issues, who's going to pay for the electricity, how are you going to draw it, that sort of thing. So I think there should be some policies mandating charging infrastructure in certain locations. It just has to be done. Shopping malls, at petrol pumps. I'll give you one example which I faced, and it was quite annoying when we were driving from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. I like to take my coffee breaks, but there's never a charger where I'm taking the coffee break. So I have to stop twice, once to grab a coffee and then once to charge it, where there's really no infrastructure other than the charging around. So I think, all these things, what we've learned is just practical experience. These finer nuances need to be thought of going forward.
Yeah, I want to actually talk about that with Anmol. Anmol, you guys have partnered with GeoBP, right? So what's your view on this, the whole charging infrastructure, what Hormazd spoke about, the challenges and all of that?
I'll get to that in a bit, but also getting back to the previous question, which was around the numbers that we will see going forward. I think the inflection point is still not happened. It is coming in, but the inflection point is still slightly away. And we believe at BluSMart or at GenSol that the inflection point is when the car hits a 250 kilometer range and a $15,000 price point. So that's going to be, or a 10 lakh rupee price point. So at a 10 lakh rupee price point, if you can deliver a 250 kilometer car range, you will see bulk of India shifting from ICE to EV. And then, of course, the charging infrastructure needs to get taken care, etc. But for EVs have started to come into consideration set. People who are buying their second cars or even their first cars have started exploring EVs, that will an EV now come to our home. But I think the sweet spot is 250 kilometers of range and a 10 lakh rupee price point. The day we can crack that, I think you will see that number going very, very suddenly higher, extremely higher, and that will be the inflection point. That is like the Kar lo duniya muthi mein moment of mobile phones. That then everybody suddenly in India, you saw that in 2 years everybody in India had a mobile phone. I believe that 250 kilometers of car range and a 10 lakh rupee price point is when India will start to convert massively towards EV. Coming towards our partnership with GeoBP, and very happy yesterday at the Reliance AGM, Mr. Mukesh Ambani mentioned BluSMart and the partnership with BluSMart in his chairman's speech. So very happy with that. Clearly, it's a great partnership that we have. GeoBP has access to some of the best real estate in the country. They have access to the best of the technology. Of course, goes without saying the amount of financial gunpowder that they have to deploy charging stations. So we are extremely pleased with the GeoBP partnership. I think it's been clearly one of the reasons of BluSmart's success has been the partnership with GeoBP. So we are very, very happy with that. We're going to roll out tens of thousands of charging stations in this partnership. It started about, it's been less than a year of our partnership, which we did. In fact, 9 September is World EV Day, when we will actually complete 1 year of our partnership. And in this 1 year, we have gone ahead and built out substantial amount of EV charging infrastructure, at least in the Delhi NCR area, which is primarily BluSmart's presence. But GeoBP is doing good. Coming to the point of what Hormazd was mentioning around housing societies, etc. I think we will, because I have some bit of power experience. GenSol is a power utility company, so coming from that perspective, we believe that what you will see that as soon as EV sales will hit a 10-15% kind of a point, that is the time when grid will start becoming a constraint. Today, there are other constraints. Today, people are not considering EVs because, like we mentioned, it's still not at the sweet spot of 250 kilometers, 10 lakhs. But as soon as it happens, you will see a lot of EV rise, which happens. But as soon as we get there, you will see that at about 10-15% penetration, our grids will start to give away. So that's going to be a much larger challenge to solve, because getting these OEMs to manufacture these cars or getting much better batteries was easier. Changing the grid infrastructure across the country. So just to tell you, if all of the country was to shift to electric, India will have to double its power production.
Wow.
That's the kind of, and it's only at the generation end. Generation end is still the easiest to solve. It is more around the distribution end, which Hormazd sir was mentioning a few minutes back, that if let's say I stay in a society, it has 600 flats. If all 600 flats convert to EV, and each of these EVs are going to require, let's say, a 25 kilowatt connection, or even if they charge at slow at 4 kilowatt kind of a connection, there is 2.5 megawatts of additional load which is required at the housing society end. That is not happening. That is a problem that we are staring at in maybe in 3 years, 4 years time. As soon as we hit that 10, 15, 20% mass of EVs, we will start to get into issues around grid infrastructure. And I think we need to start talking about it right now, so that in 3-4 years time, because this is not just private capital which needs to get involved. It is also a lot of state utilities, and it is a lot of government also which needs to start getting involved to fix this. At least policy bana dijiye, maybe private capital will solve the capital part of it.
Yeah, I assume that when you say 10, 15, 20%, you mean 10, 15%, 20% of total automobile sales in India. Yeah. Sorry, Hormazd, you were saying something.
No, I think, he's raised a very valid point, and it's actually quite worrying, because, there is a good chance that the infrastructure will clearly lag the demand. And, historically, we've seen this in something like CNG. where, we've been talking of CNG for 20, 25 years. It's a great fuel, but we still don't have the network or the pan-India spread of it. So if CNG, is having a challenge, I think, it's maybe right or wrong to assume that we would still have a challenge, with the infrastructure going forward. And I think a bigger point also, Anmol, is that, if we double up our generation, how much of it is going to be renewable, because otherwise it just defeats the whole purpose of, getting going to EV. Because, I've always said the enemy is not actually the ICE engine, which is actually quite clean in many ways, but it's a CO2 producer. So the enemy really is CO2, because frankly, we've seen that today is the single biggest threat to humanity. We're seeing what's happening in Pakistan, really the devastation there. It is really heart-wrenching. And it's all because of climate change and global warming. And CO2 is the number one enemy. So, I think just going flat out and, with EVs without renewable power generation isn't really going to solve the problem. So I think it's even the renewables, the non-fossil power generation, the non-thermal power generation, which has to be looked at, because otherwise, to me, it's no longer pollution. I mean, I'll be honest, latest generation of IC engines are so clean that, especially with or the kind of, it's like they're moving laboratories and they just clean up the air as it sucks it in. But they emit CO2, and CO2 is the number one enemy. And that's, I think, what needs to be done. And, again, talking about the charging infrastructure, it's, I think, again, as Anmol said, sorting this whole grid problem, I think that has really not been talked about. And I think that's really going to become a big issue as we go forward.
Yeah, you've pretty much answered my next question, Hormazd, because it was going to be about, do we actually know whether EVs are helping against climate change? But you've kind of clarified on that we need to solve the renewable thing. Anmol, any thoughts on what Hormazd said?
Yeah, of course. We run a decent-sized renewable energy business at GenSol, so we have good information on how the power, the new capacity is coming up. So I think if I look at all planning commission documents and the power sector is not planned for next 3 months or next 6 months. Power sector is planned for at least a decade, 2 decades is how power sector is planned, because all these investments that go in power plants are 25 to 40 year investments, whether they are on the transmission side, on the generation side. So you need to do power sector planning for next 10, 15 years. And at least there has been a lot of consistency of the fact that 60-70% of all new power plants in the country will be renewables. Today, we have about a 25% kind of a share in the total kitty of power produced as renewables. So we have 75% black and let's say 25% green. But all amongst the incremental capacity which is coming up, about 70% of it is going to be all green, which would mean that perhaps by 2030, we are hitting the number of maybe 50% green and 50% black. But maybe by 2050, it will be something like 100% clean energy, which will be there. So I think there things are going fine. But it is, you have 250,000 megawatts of coal-fired power plants and gas-fired power plants which are already operating in the country, and no way the country can afford that these power plants kind of go down or renewable can replace them in the next 5-7 years. That's not going to be possible. So at least for 1 decade more, you will see the peak of coal and gas to happen, and maybe by 2030-35 is when we will see dominance of renewables coming through. And then, of course, once the dominance of renewables comes in, till the time renewables get disrupted by something else, and we do not know what technology disrupts renewables, but till the time renewables is the lowest. So renewables are great because 2 things happen in renewables. One, it is the lowest cost of energy. Today, coal is 6-7 rupees a kilowatt hour. Renewables, solar is 2.5 rupees a kilowatt hour. So when it's the lowest, it's the cheapest form of energy, it's the greenest form of energy. So without any doubt, renewables already hit its inflection point, like what we were discussing for inflection point for EVs. Renewables has already hit that. So not a real problem, but it's just that we have a large coal gas dominated infrastructure which is there, which will take at least a decade to kind of transform.
Okay, guys, I think a lot of technical detail out here. Let's move to some exciting stuff. Hormazd, have you driven a Tesla? And
I have.
For that matter.
I've driven quite a few Teslas. In fact, the first one I drove was I think in 2013 in the UK. Quite amazing. I think really has been the gold standard for EVs globally. But I have to say others are catching up. And some cars I've driven, I think I even prefer them to the Teslas. I think one's got to understand, Tesla, the strength is not the car part of it. It's the software and battery part of it. That's really what makes the car. In fact, the car bits are in a way not good, really. They're fit, finish. They haven't really bothered about that.
Wow. Okay.
And, in India, they were testing their Model 3, that very low ground clearance. I drove a friend's Model 3, it hit every speed breaker here. So a lot of work to be done. So, but I think, clearly where Tesla has, it's been absolutely phenomenal what they have done and shown the world and really caught legacy automakers flat-footed. But have I driven it? Yes. Fantastic to drive, a great experience. That big screen over there, it just dominates the interior. And I think a lot of had to play catch up, but people are catching up.
Yeah. Anmol, what about
you? Even the autonomous features are quite cool. Lane change is very cool. If you get in close proximity to a car, how the car slows down automatically. I think all of those features are very cool. It actually
the autopilot function. I've not used that because it was in India. It was obviously disabled here, and when I drove it in the UK some years back, it wasn't there either. But that's something I'd love to try.
It's absolutely amazing. So a couple of things. If there's a car in front of you which slows down, the Tesla slows down automatically. If you are changing lanes without giving an indicator, it doesn't let you change lanes. So it's good. I think it's more of like Hormazd sir mentioned, it's not just about the car, but it's more about the intelligence that car has. I think it's more about the computer than the physical, than the car which is there.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Hormazd mentioned software and battery. So let's talk about innovations in India. Let's talk about specifically where we are now in the ecosystem, in the whole cycle. Where do you guys think that where we are, and what do you think you can expect to see going forward on the innovation front for EVs? And Anmol, you can go first. Hormazd can join in.
Yeah, so I think at our end, we are in two kind of buckets. One is a bucket of ours where we are a EV ride-hailing company, so we look forward to a lot of innovations being done by all the automobile players. Two, inside in our listed entity, which is GenSol Engineering, we've gone ahead and acquired a US-based startup to start manufacturing EV cars in the country. And we are having our first plant, which is being built out in Chakan. This is a 2-seater car which is going to get started in Chakan in January, and then there is a 4-seater car which comes in August. I think if I could use the word, the only innovation that we have been trying to do right now is that we want to actually get to that sub 10 lakh rupee car with a 250 kilometer range. I think I just want to deliver on that and nothing else. If I can deliver, if we as a team can deliver on it and the full ecosystem we can deliver on it, I think we will deliver on India getting Indian roads having more electric cars. But having said that, I think, and because the previous question was around Tesla, I think there are some of these cool features which can easily be brought into the cars that at least we are trying to build at GenSol, and we will see that our cars will have at least not all the features, but some of these features will surely be there around blind spot detection, because that is easily what a human being cannot done, but cameras inside the car can do. So around that, we're trying to do a innovation around bumper to bumper movements, because in cities people are so much kind of trapped in bumper to bumper movements. We're trying to say that the car locks into the earlier in the car which is front of you. So if you have to maintain a 20 centimeter distance between two cars, the cars automatically kind of maintain a 20 centimeter kind of a distance. So we're trying to bring in such smaller innovations which might make the life of which might make driving there can be no pleasure in driving bumper to bumper, but just ease the pain of doing it.
Yeah, Hormazd, your views?
No, I think, I like very much like Anmol's target of, 10 lakhs and 250 kilometer range. But, Anmol, I'll be very honest, I think that's going to be a huge challenge, at least in the short term. Firstly, we've seen the way raw material prices are going the other way with all the geopolitical issues. So we are seeing this big rush to secure raw materials, not only by OEMs, but by countries as well. So I think, lithium, as long as we are dependent on lithium, which the batteries are, it's going to be a challenge. I think the breakthroughs really will come when we see a change in technology. People are talking solid state, that's still some time away. looking at, all other kind of, let's say sodium anodes, that sort of thing, moving away from graphite and, looking at other kind of, let's say, more energy dense solutions. But that leads me to what I think where the innovation is. And unfortunately, we are really not in that race. And the secret sauce of an EV today is the battery. Everything else is pretty much commoditized. Let's be honest, you can just pick it up from suppliers, but the battery is the secret sauce. And that's where it's controlled by a few, battery makers, which we are also dependent on. China, for example, is very strong in LFP chemistry. Europeans are also now moving there. Even Tesla, which was an NMC chemistry, is now moving to LFP chemistry. Obviously, it's got its benefits, not as energy dense as NMC was. And clearly, we've got the PLI scheme happening over here to make batteries. I think that's, what the government has done to encourage local cell production over here. A lot of companies have signed up for that. But, in terms of sheer technology, others have really raced ahead, and and the investments are huge. You need the kind of scale. So to be honest, I'm a bit worried as far as, let's say on the battery side, globally, where we will stand. We will be dependent, let's say on other players, foreign players for our batteries. And, and that controls the destiny of EVs.
Okay. So we're just, starting to wind down the episode. Last couple of questions. I think one big one is the one that we can't ignore, which is the government. How do you guys think that the government is doing on all the policies towards EV, good, bad, ugly, fast, slow? Anmol, you first, and then Hormazd.
I think BluSMart clearly started because of very strong government policies. So we've been benefited by government policies. First one being around GST. GST on electric cars is 5%, which is a big benefit, which is there. FAME subsidy, which the government has come out. I think the entire two-wheel boom is because FAME came to the personal mobility side on two wheels also. If it comes on to the four-wheel side, I think it would straight away double, triple the amount of cars being sold. Of course, there are not as many cars only available, which is another constraint. But at least there will be so much more demand if FAME starts to come on four-wheel personal mobility also. So FAME was great. I think these two were kind of the key areas. One of the things that I have to actually mention is, which people don't realize as much, is the fact that setting up of charging station in Electricity Act got exempted as a permitted activity. So this is slightly technical on the power side, but you cannot actually sell power. There are only regulated entities which can sell power, and selling of power in a charging station is was deregulated, and that happened on 18th October 2019, and that's the day we actually decided that we will go ahead and do BluSMart, because that we thought that this was going to be a big constraint if only regulated entities can set up charging stations. So that was a big initiative. I think there was no start to the sector if that was not there. Lot still to be done. For no reason, the GST on charging infra is 18%. For GST on car is 5%, but GST on charging infra is still 18%. I don't understand the reason why. And I think around some more things around what we discussed around grid strengthening, etc. That needs to be done. I really don't think we still need a lot of subsidies. I'm okay if subsidies kind of wane off in the next couple of years. Not a big fan of building a business dependent totally on subsidies, whether it was earlier solar energy. In fact, if you see the solar sector did better without subsidies than what it did with subsidies. So in the Elon Musk camp, when they say that, we actually don't need subsidies to run electric cars, fuel cost itself is a big arbitrage. So really don't need any subsidies to come in. So rather would want whatever the government is spending 10,000 crores on giving out FAME, spend that same money in strengthening the grid. I think that's a money much better spent than giving out subsidies to buy cars.
Hormazd?
Yeah, I think I would agree that I think the two big triggers have been, especially for cars, for EVs, the 5% GST. It's huge. If you see, where it's gone from 48% to 5%, it's just fantastic. I think that's just a brilliant kind of, let's say, action taken by the government. And of course, the FAME subsidies. Where I would differ a bit is I still think we need to first build a vehicle park. I think that is important. So it's always a chicken and egg situation, is infrastructure or vehicle park. So I would say that, with FAME, let's say, encouraging, more demand for EVs. I think, subsidies, need to be there for a while. But you're completely right, Anmol. You can't build a business case on subsidies because, one day it could just go like that. And in fact, the product has to stand, the economics have to stand on their own, which will happen as we move towards a tipping point. It's all about scale. The more cars you produce, the unit economics become better. And I think clearly the focus should be on charging infrastructure, at least in the short term. And I think in long term, we need to have strong policies at really as a national level on our, in a way, energy security. And that is on the battery side. I think we should be having policies on how do we kind of make India a hub also for battery cell production with the right technologies, with the right scale and at the right price. Because again, as I said, batteries are really the key to the EV.
Yeah, and Hormazd, I'm going to put this one to you because you've been literally doing this for almost 30 years at reviewing pretty much every automobile that's been there. What would be your recommendation to our listeners? Should they buy the EV? Something they should keep in mind? Should they consider it? And all of that. What would be your recommendation here?
So I think, I'll put it this way. If you're in the city and you have access to a plug, it's actually a no-brainer. You have no idea how many friends have converted to EVs and they're thanking me for it. Yeah. And it's not so much for just, the running cost. It doesn't add up, frankly, even yet with the price if you're running in the city. I think what people tend to forget, and we never talk about, we only talk about running cost, pollution, CO2, all that with an EV, that EVs are actually much nicer to drive. They are just so easy to drive that it shocks people. There are no jerks, there are no gears to be changed, there's no lag with the engine. It's such a linear, smooth power delivery. It's quiet. So, it's like driving a golf cart for many people. It is so easy that the convenience and the pleasure of driving an EV in town, that's something that hits you once you've driven an EV. And, once people drive an EV, they're converted, they can't go back to ICE. But again, long distance, if you're going to use it, it's going to be a bit of a challenge still until the infra comes up. You can't just go to Mahabaleshwar quite easily in it. You will have to stop and charge somewhere. So all that will happen. But I think there are a lot of early adopters who even are willing to take that little inconvenience. So I think, yes, I'm an advocate, especially in cities where pollution levels are high, all that. I think EVs is the way to go in towns.
Yeah. Anmol, same question, but I want to, if you can just touch upon the scary part, the fire, aag lag gaya, explosion ho gaya, and that kind of gets so much of attention on social media. Same question, but with this question. I mean, with this added thing about explosions and safety and all that.
So unfortunately, there have been these cases, but on the four-wheel side, I think we've had just one case of a Tata Nexon in Bombay, and which is still under investigation. There are also rumors around it being malified intent, etc., which are there. But on the four-wheel side, I think it's a much more stabler technology because primarily all four-wheel in the country is LFP. So that's very good. And four-wheels have much better controls, much better cooling systems, etc. For example, just to tell you, the Tata Tigor that we drive, if the battery temperature goes slightly higher, the entire air conditioning of the car gets diverted to the battery. So there will be no air conditioning coming to the passenger, which is fine. We don't want the car to blow up in an explosion, and all the air conditioning will actually go towards the battery. So there are much better control systems which are built in the four wheels for some of these incidents not to happen. We have personally at BluSMart now, in fact, driven 75 million kilometers in 75 years of Indian independence. We were just doing that 75 yesterday.
Wow.
So in that 75 million kilometers that we have driven on the BluSMart fleet, we've had zero incident till date, absolutely zero incident. And our fleet comprises of earlier Mahindra e-Veritos, a lot of Tata Tigors, both Electra version, Ziptron version, and then also the MGs and the BYDs. And we have not had a single incident, which I would even say, which is close to something gets a fire, that it did not blow up, but it became very hot. We have not even had that kind of an incident which is there. I think these cars are pretty well built, all of them, which we just mentioned. So on the four-wheel side, I think my confidence is very high that we are not going to see any of these incidents happening. And with the technology becoming better and better every day, I think it's pretty much going to be a zero incident. But on the two-wheel side, I think two-wheel is a slightly more crowded situation out there. So the quality checks around two wheels are not that robust, perhaps. So two wheels, I think the industry needs to kind of improve themselves and get in more robustness in quality procedures. But I think on the four wheel side, given that we have all large OEMs, I think they are doing a solid job.
Yeah. So I just want to understand the challenges to the industry as such, given, if I were to recap the conversation we've had so far in the last half an hour, 40 minutes, one is obviously the grid. Like you said, that once we reach 10, 15, 20%, there's going to be, so that there's a challenge of the grid, the infrastructure on that side. Second challenge, I guess, is the charging infrastructure needs to probably be a little bit more. Third is what you said for two-wheelers, still some issues. Anything else I'm missing here, guys, that you want to just add in? And there's a question to both of you. Challenges to the EV industry.
I think it's cost. They're still too expensive, and I think cost needs to come down for more mass adoption. I mean, if you see the delta with the ICE vehicle, it's still quite high. I mean, Nexon has really come closest with that. But, to be honest, I don't think Tata Motors is making much of a margin on this. It's very strategic to kind of build, and it's a great strategy, to kind of really own the EV space. But I think EVs are still too costly, and hopefully that cost will come down. But, currently the cost is largely the battery. It's 60% of the cost of a vehicle. And until that battery cost starts really dramatically dropping, that to me is a big challenge.
Yeah, Anmol?
Yeah, I think I agree that I'm in my head 10 lakhs 250 kilometers. That's the only thing that goes in my head every day in the morning. And
what do you think? How far are we from that? If you were to just put a number.
We are less than 4 quarters away from 10 lakh 250 kilometers.
You're saying in less than a year we'll hit that number?
Yeah, I think same time next year we should have a car which is 10 lakh 250 kilometers.
And I just hope that our infrastructure can accommodate. I mean, like you said, because we all know that there are those, like you said, the inflection points that then just multiply demand.
Anmol, I want to be the first to drive it. I'm very excited.
Sure. Sir, you will be the first one to drive it, sir.
Okay, so
I think there is no car launch in the country without you not driving it first. Roman of the industry. What do you say, Anupam?
I totally agree. You don't even know the kind of fanboy moment I'm having.
But I love that target. I think it's a lovely number, 10 lakh 250 kilometers. And you summed it up. It's cost versus range, which is always the tricky balance. You increase range, the cost goes up, and vice versa. So that's a nice sweet spot.
For the benefit of our listeners, where are we right now? Just if I were to just compare, where are we right now?
I think the cheapest vehicle is a Tigor, which is about, around 12 lakhs now, and about,
12,
I would say, 200 pace.
200, 205, 210, yeah. 12 lakh, 210.
Hey, come on, guys. 12 lakh, 10 lakh, 200, 250. I like that bold bet you've taken there, Anmol. Yeah? Okay, last couple of questions on the investment side before we wind up. Anmol, what are you saying on the investment side? A lot of people coming in, putting their money, betting, foreign, domestic. Kya lag raha hai wahan pe?
Sir, so how I always share with our team is that we have everything in the EV industry. We don't have everything in the EV industry. We don't have raw material. We don't have charging infrastructure. There is only plenty of money which is there in the industry. So I think there is you will not get lithium, you will not get charging infra, but you will get tons of money if you want to build it. So I think money is the last constraint for any of us out there who are trying to kind of do. And it's courtesy that you don't even have to go to traditional VCs, PEs, etc., to raise this money. There is a huge amount of money which is there on energy transition, enormous money which is there on energy transition. And especially I was, last 2 weeks at Europe, the drought that is happening there, climate change is so much in our face, and people are terrified. And when people are terrified, they are wanting to write large checks to any company which is trying to kind of disrupt or work towards energy transition. And whether it is, our lead investor is BP, which is one of the largest oil and gas companies in the world, which has a net zero target. So that is, huge amount of money which is available. So I think last constraint in moving towards energy transition will not be money. Can be other things, but will surely not be money.
Yeah. Hormazd, what about you? I mean, have you got any calls from someone saying that, are you considering a change in career at this day? You want to become the CEO of an EV company? Do you want to come in as a consultant? Like Anmol said, tons of money. What do you think?
I think Anmol has summed it up really well. I mean, it's not just money, and the money just drive up valuations. I mean, if you look at Mahindra, just with a 250 million small investment, that valuation was pegged at 9 billion without them even making an EV. No, really, they don't have anything right now. Same with Tata Motors. They got from TPG Climate Rise again massive investment, $2 billion, and value the company at again some crazy amount, 9 billion just for the EV. So I think valuations, investments, they're all pouring in. I think the challenge really is, when you get so much money, you get initially into a cash burn kind of a mode, and one has to make sure that eventually the businesses turn profitable. I think that is the biggest challenge, not getting the money, but making the business profitable. Because right now, really, it's this whole cost versus demand versus, what we talked about, and a challenge. And Anmol, I think even at 10 lakhs and 250 range, I don't know what the margins would be on that. That's really the challenge going forward, and being sustainable. Because right now, everyone, as I said, you get so much money, you're very tempted to burn it just to buy the market and seed your products. So I think, making the business profitable long run, to me, is the biggest challenge.
Can this be profitable for investors? Okay, I know that, obviously neither of you are experts on the stock market. Neither am I for that matter. But do you get, questions about should I invest in this stock or in that stock? I'm just trying to understand from last question that from a retail investor's perspective, do you have any words of wisdom out there when he's investing in the stock market to play this theme? Hormazd, you first and then Anmol.
Well, I'm not much into the stock market, and frankly, as a policy, I own stocks, but as a policy, I don't own any auto stocks. Just feel better that way. Sometimes you tend to know a lot, so just as a policy, I don't have that. But I think everyone is taking a punt on new energy and this transition. And as Anmol very rightly said, I think it's very pertinent. Climate change is in your face. So really all the money, investment, future money is being diverted or put into areas of really, arresting climate change, whatever it is. It could even be a manufacturing process, not just EVs, anything that reduces the carbon footprint right now is big. And really that's what's dominating global discourse these days.
Thanks, Hormazd. And Anmol, what do you think?
Sir, I think typical stock market, I don't say anything for 3 months, 6 months, but in 5 years, I think any of the incumbent players who are there are, all of them are super companies, Tata Motors, Mahindras, all of these are super companies. And in 5 years, they will have a great EV portfolio and should be doing exceptionally well. The key concern is around margins, which I also think with scale, there will be margins which will start coming in. And ultimately, the product is better. Physics is better. Fundamentally, energy required to take 1 ton of mass on an EV is much lesser than energy required to take 1 ton of mass on ICE vehicles. So the physics is better. So you cannot defeat physics. So that's always going to be there. So the sector is poised to rise because there is fundamental physics behind it, and I think that's how the markets will also realize that physics gets converted to economics one day and creates wealth for a lot of people who started to believe in the sector early on.
And look at that, physics turning into economics in the stock markets. I love that. Nice insight, Anmol. So folks, if you want to know more about the EV sector, do check out the Electric Mobility Small Case, which is a portfolio of stocks that will benefit from growth in the EV space that you can track and invest in with your favorite brokerage account. Links in the episode description and show notes. That is a wrap on this wonderful episode of the Ideas Project. Folks, hope you enjoyed this amazing chat with Anmol and Hormazd, and hope this helps you understand the EV sector a little bit better. Hormazd, Anmol, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
Thank you. It was a lovely discussion. Anmol, great to catch up with you as well. Yeah. So hope to meet in person soon. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Anupam.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. And folks, if you like this episode, do consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. This podcast is powered by Small Case. We will come back with more insightful conversations to help you achieve a well-rounded investment portfolio. Until then, bye-bye. See you next Wednesday for a brand new episode of the Ideas Project.
Hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. Do you know that every time you recall a memory, you tweak it a little bit? Listen to Ashton talk to Dr. Nicole Byers, neuropsychologist and CEO of Rocky Mountain Neurosciences in Calgary, while they discuss this fascinating topic. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Puneet, Nivedita and myself can't stop gushing over the inauguration of India's first double-decker electric bus. I don't think there was that much gushing, but go ahead and listen to it. It was fun anyway. On Advertising is Dead is All Business, Varun talks to Bliss Club founder Minu Margaret about her journey of building a community-centric brand. On A Niche Thing, Anish talks to Sonika Bhasin, a sustainability enthusiast. The duo discuss waste management and effective ways of recycling, and duo they really are. Sonika is Anish's sister. And on A Sip of Finance, Priyanka explains 3 things one should consider before getting health insurance. Hey everybody, as you know, we've been beating the horse for merchandise, and you should go and get it now before we refresh our collections. And what's there right now won't be available forever, so go get it now. You can go to ivmpodcast.com, go click on the store link, and you'll be able to find the store, or go to beyondfollow.com/IVM, and you can go directly over there and pick up the merchandise. Also, remember, if you're following this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Social media helps, but not as much of word of mouth. But if you're a social media fellow, then go to our IVM podcast handle on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn and follow us there. Also, please do remember to check out all of our different YouTube channels. We have a ton of them now. You can go to ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, where we maintain a list of all of these channels. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors for this week: TransUnion Civil, Boat Lifestyle, Checkpoint Software, Small Case, and Intel vPro. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market, and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Dugirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers from across business, media, marketing, and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcasts from.